It's hard to believe, but Volkswagen has been building its Touareg SUV for over 20 years now, and it's always been a caravan owner's favourite. So, when we learned Volkswagen had given the car a styling and tech overhaul, we were keen to get behind the wheel. This generation of Touareg launched in 2018, but for 2024 it has turned up the style a notch. There's a wider grille, new front and rear bumpers, and a very on-trend light bar for both the front and the rear. And at the back, the VW badge also lights up. It's hard to believe this current generation of Touareg first launched back in 2018 when you look at the interior, because it still looks really modern in here. And the main reason for that are these two absolutely enormous screens. Now, for this updated 2024 model, all Touaregs get this dual screen setup. Before, the entry-level model had a much smaller screen here with a very ugly bezel around it. It runs VW's latest infotainment system. VW have definitely improved it over the past few years. It's still not the best system in the world, but it's quite easy to use once you've got used to it. And because of the screen's sheer size, using it when you're on the road, when you're actually driving, is relatively straightforward. However, I would like the air conditioning controls, particularly the temperature control, to be physical dials. You have to plunge yourself into the screen to make minor adjustments to the temperature, and I don't really like that. Aside from that, the build quality is fantastic. It feels very plush in here. In the centre console here, you've got two big cup holders. You've got a wireless charging pad under here. And again, everything just works really nicely. Down here, you've got two knobs that control the air suspension on the left, and the one on the right is your driving modes, and you can put the Touareg into all sorts of different settings. The driving position is incredibly comfortable, a huge amount of adjustment. These seats are ergonomically designed. They're very supportive. It's very easy to get a good driving position as well. The only thing I don't like is this steering wheel. It's got these touch sensitive buttons, and I find it very easy when you're turning the steering wheel to accidentally press one of them. For example, on the drive over here today, I kept hitting the heated steering wheel button. This particular system has come in for a lot of criticism, actually, so much so that VW has already decided to replace this system with actual physical buttons, and you'll find that on the new Tiguan and the new Golf Mark 8.5, but unfortunately the Touareg makes do with this button arrangement. Let's take a look in the back. Now, the first thing to mention about the Touareg is that unlike its Audi Q7 sister car, which is a 7-seat SUV, the Touareg is just a 5-seater. Now, it's not a huge problem, that, unless you really do want to carry two people in the back, but it does mean that people back here have consequently got loads and loads of space, and you really do have loads. I'm about 5'11" and I've got plenty of knee room here. That seat is set up in my driving position, and look at the amount of space I've got. And I can even put my feet underneath the seat in front of me and really get very comfortable. Headroom is great too. Even with this panoramic glass roof, there's loads of space for your head. And these back seats, they can slide forwards if you need a bit of extra space in the back, or they can slide all the way back as well if you want to prioritise knee room. They also recline, so you can get really very comfortable back here, especially with this armrest. It does feel incredibly comfortable. Now, in terms of goodies, well, we've got climate control for both backseat passengers, and there's a couple of USB-C charging ports as well. As the Touareg is only a 5-seater, the boot is massive at 810 litres. Fold down the 40-20-40 split folding rear seats, and that grows to an enormous 1800 litres.
There's only one tow hook available, an electronically folding one, which also comes with trailer assist, allowing the driver to reverse the car once hooked up by using the electric mirror switch instead of shuffling the steering wheel. It works surprisingly well. Other clever optional features include Park Assist Plus, that allows you to park the car in a parking space by controlling it from your smartphone while standing outside of the car.
Now, unlike a lot of car makers who have fitted much smaller engines to their SUVs that rely on turbocharged technology, Volkswagen has, well, with the Touareg, it's thought that bigger is better. It's kept the larger capacity engines for the Touareg. So there's the bread and butter 3-litre V6 diesels with 228 brake horsepower and 282 brake horsepower, and there's a couple of plug-in hybrids, one of which is the high-performance R variant that has 455 brake horsepower and yet can travel up to 30 miles in pure electric mode. Now, perhaps surprisingly, we're driving the other engine variant, which is the 3-litre V6 petrol. Now, this is pretty unusual because most manufacturers add a mild hybrid system to their big petrol engine, but not Volkswagen. Now, you might think that's a bit unusual for a tow car. The obvious choice would be the diesels, but don't dismiss this engine because it really is a lovely, lovely engine. The power delivery is really creamy smooth, and this engine's considerably more refined than the V6 diesel. Now, obviously, you're going to be howling at the screen now saying, yes, but the fuel consumption will be awful. Well, no, it isn't actually. Now, VW claim around 25 mpg on the combined cycle, and yet I have found in my 500 miles of testing this, I've routinely been seeing 30 mpg on long distance routes. Now, the Touareg steers and handles pretty neatly for what is a very large SUV. Now, all bar that entry-level plug-in hybrid version, all Touaregs get air suspension. You can dial it up and dial it down with the drive mode select here. I've got in comfort mode at the moment. It just glides over potholes. Really does feel brilliant. But if you want to stiffen everything up, perhaps you're on a twisty road, you can select Sport and it does tighten down quite nicely. Now, should you find yourself having to tackle some off-road terrain, you're not going to be disappointed. The Touareg does look like a very road-biased SUV, but it's got a few party tricks. When you select off-road mode on the drive mode select, the air suspension rises up, you can tweak various parameters of the car. And not only does it have good ground clearance in the off-road setting, but there's also great traction.
All versions of the Touareg can tow up to 3,500 kilograms, so even with the Caravan and Motorhome Club's suggested 85% towing limit, all caravanners should find something suitable to tow with. The best thing about the Touareg is that it has gutsy performance and gives a very stable towing performance. We tested the Touareg in some high winds and it just got on with the job. Aside from the odd tug on more undulating roads, you really wouldn't know you were towing. With just under 340 brake horsepower, the V6 pulls very strongly and gave a super refined and quiet driving experience. Just be prepared for low fuel consumption. During our test, we returned 18 mpg and that wasn't with the car fully loaded with passengers or belongings. The Touareg is one of the finest large SUVs for towing on the market. It has gutsy performance, a smooth ride, and takes charge of a large caravan with ease. We'd recommend taking a test drive of different engines as they all have their own individual strengths.